Khabib Nurmagomedov taking on Justin Gaethje, and this was I think about MMA is a sport where miracles can happen, but we're reminded over and over again that they probably won't.
Mhm.
And that's how I felt about this fight. I thought, in my imagination would go wild with, wow, Gaethje could stuff the takedown and if he puts leather to Khabib, he might be able to hurt him, knock him out. And then I started thinking about it more as the fight got closer. And Colin called me and he's like, "What do you think is going to happen?" And I just remembered that, oh, yeah, life is hard.
Mm.
And I don't think, I was like, no, Khabib is probably just going to do what he does. And he sure as hell did.
Yeah.
And at a level I've never seen before. Like, he did it was like he like he improved upon like what we thought was possible for Khabib with his style.
Yeah.
Pressure, takedowns, ground and pound submission, and then also his stand up. At every part of the game that we thought Khabib was the best in the world, in this fight, in less than 2 rounds, he proved that he was even better than the guy that we thought he was.
Yes. That was easily the best Khabib we've ever seen. Um, Came straight out, fought so dangerously in the first round. Like, it's just so dangerous. Was like, I'm not even going to bother trying to shoot on this guy. I'm going to walk him down with my hands for this entire round at a furious pace, a breakneck pace that was out of this world, like an unsustainable pace. Like, you're not going to go to decision like that. Khabib's like, I'm going to finish. I'm going to break this dude. I'm going to break the guy that breaks other people with pressure and pace. It was nuts. Gaethje, circling heavy, trying to keep his back off the cage, but like, it was like a tornado was after him. He didn't, he was all over the place. And then something I've been doing this past couple of months now that we've been betting on all these fights real heavy is I've been like, man, I gotta go with my gut because I always get a gut feeling about these fights about what I think's gonna happen, and it's almost always right. Almost always right is the gut instinct that I originally had. There's a Khabib submission, like duh, of course it was a Khabib submission because specifically this whole thing, everybody's like Gaethje's got this elite wrestling, right? Khabib's never fought somebody that had an elite level of wrestling, and I was like, Gaethje may have elite wrestling, but we've never seen it. He's never had to use it in the UFC before. And even if he does have this great wrestling, it's probably not very sharp because he's never had to use it in an active scenario. And the wrestling is totally separate from the total ground game and jujitsu and everything else that's going on in the ground. Um, his his wrestling was whatever. It was not great by any means, but it was so chaotic, right? Khabib was when he shot for the couple 2 takedowns that he got, right? It was like in this panic, right? Like everything's just going crazy, and then he shot, right? As soon as it hit the ground, it was over. It was pathetic. Gaethje on the ground was nothing. He had no defense whatsoever. As soon as his back hit the cage, he just laid there, and Khabib just stepped over and got mount triangle. He had nothing on the ground. Like
Yeah, man.
that was almost shocking to me how bad he was on the ground, and I was like, I can't believe like you can't have a ground game that bad and fight against Khabib. You just can't. You can't do it.
I don't believe that his ground game is that bad. I like for a top level because we've
Now
seen
you're
Gage
get out of here.
we've seen Gage. There's another one.
They're all
there
over.
we've seen Gaethje scramble before, and he scrambles really well.
Mhm.
For him to not move once he hit the mat, um, and I'm gonna have to rewatch it again to see if he really tried anything. Um, But something as bizarre as that leads me to believe that he may, in just my opinion, I think he was more than likely hurt
Oh,
in
for
some
sure.
way.
Or at
Um,
the bare minimum, exhausted and
well,
confused.
but that's the thing too. Like, but that's get like a pace like that is that I mean everyone when you game it out pre-fight, a pace like that is a thing where you think of a guy like Gaethje and you go, perfect, fine. I mean, he's done it before. He's done it over 25 minutes. Um, but yeah, man, I like the lack of movement from bottom. There's got to be something that we will probably never know. Because Gaethje's just not the doesn't seem to be the type of dude to talk about those things after a fight. Um, but the lack of movement from bottom really either Khabib is just that strong or Gaethje was not 100%. I mean, to Khabib's credit, he wasn't 100% either. So
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, it's not a thing like poor Gaethje or this is. I mean, Gaethje. What we saw in the octagon is probably how that fight goes every single time, and they could do it from now until they're dusty old men.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, man, it was. It
Different
was.
skill set. It's like the beef skill set is always going to win against the guys that have a skill set like a Dustin Poirier or a Justin Gaethje.
Well, I think that I think that Khabib just wins against any skill set at 155 pounds. I don't. It's Let me go ahead and I'll take us into our next kind of section, right?
Basically.
Um, transition over. Talking about who Khabib beats, and very shortly, um, I don't want to get lost in the pound for pound discussion because I think it's a waste of time ultimately. Pound for pound rankings, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Like, if we put all these men in a tournament together, who's going to win? Because for a while, people said it was Demetrius Johnson, um, which I just don't. Or like, if they're all the same size and weight class, this is whose skills win. It just is a
Doesn't matter.
useless. It's just a useless list. But let's just for a second, even though I personally think it's a useless list, where do you think Khabib ends up on the pound for pound list?
On Monday morning, he will be number one currently. As of right now, he'll be number one and he'll be there for a week and then he'll be gone from the rankings altogether because he just retired
Yeah,
and it'll be irrelevant.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah, GSP said something speaking to Ariel Hawani, a thing that I very much agree with. He's, you know, the way he put it was that the greatest of all time. I mean, he also was trying to say that it's ultimately a meaningless thing because it's determined by who is the recent who has the most recent fight.
Yeah.
Like um, when Khabib beat Gaethje on Saturday, he became the greatest of all time. When John Jones stopped Gustafson, or when he stopped Cormier, he became the greatest of all time. Um, GSP knocking down and submitting uh, Michael Bisping. He became the greatest of all time. And it is just this constant thing that as people get older and retire and younger fighters do great things, it's just greatest of all time or number one pound for pound. It is just never going to get settled. Um, and I think ultimately because this sport is so it's based on what we can prove. You know what I mean? It's based on like, well, if this guy's better than this guy, then they should they should fight each other because that's what we do in the sport. And when that's not possible, eh, I don't think it's super useful. Um, but so you think that Khabib come Monday will be number one, and then it'll just kind of be uh, whoever the most recent really good fighter is that fights.
It'll go back to John until
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. How about him getting salty, huh?
Whatever. It's John. He'll start good. He had a night. The tweet right out of the gate was fine. Yeah, go ahead, just have your moment. Sorry about your dad. But then he had to think about it. Go
And
now,
then he
wait.
was like, you know what?
You
I
know
need to
what?
make this about me now.
Right? Y'all gonna take my accomplishments away from me?